So the question's asked a lot, is there any benefit to mock drafting in May? Yes, there is. Unless you really don't care and just want a fantasy football roster full of shit. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. We got ourselves a mock draft queued up for today. Yeah, we've started to see some questions out there in the comment section. When are we going to start mock drafts? Well, this week is the week that we start doing mock drafts. And is it still a little bit early? Yeah, it is. But you know what? Quarantine sucks and we need something else to do. So why not start mock drafting just a little bit early? This is really where you start to prepare your draft plans. Put together a list of players that maybe you look forward to drafting a little bit later in your fantasy football drafts. That's what this is all about, right? It's finding the value, not reaching too far for a player, but making sure you get the guys that you like. That's what it's all about. So here we are on fantasypros.com, got the draft wizard queued up. Just a normal half-point PPR, 12 teams, going to be in the 10 spot. Just a 1 quarterback lead, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, a flex spot, and 8 bench spots. And we're going to kind of see what kind of team we can come up with here using a few different strategies. But I want to really, more than anything, kind of just give you guys a glimpse into how I go through the thought process of doing mock drafts. So let's go ahead and get this draft started. All right, so here we go into the draft room. It's going to make its selections here to start off the draft. Like I said, we're in the 10 spot, right? And let's see what happened here the first 10 picks. One of the biggest rules in fantasy football is to pay attention to the draft board. Find the players that are going off the board beforehand and kind of keep an eye on these other rosters, right? You know, pay attention to how many running backs they have and wide receivers. It can kind of help you gauge maybe where they're going to be going in the next round to just kind of give yourself a plan moving forward. So right off the bat, no surprise really, right? Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott 1, 2, and 3, Alvin Kamara at 4, and Dalvin Cook. So 5 straight running backs coming off the board. Then we get our first wide receivers. We got Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams. Pretty sure that's everybody's 1 and 2 out there. And then we get Joe Mixon there at number 8, Derrick Henry at number 9. So a very heavy, run on running backs. And this is what you're going to see in 2020 fantasy football. You probably see it almost every year in fantasy football, right? It's making sure you have those solid stud running backs. We're big proponents of getting early running backs over here also. So let's go ahead and pull up the cheat sheets. Let's see who's available for us here at the 10th overall spot. Right now, are we going quarterback? No, it's still too early. We love the value late. And we talked about value here in the opening a little bit, finding that value, right? Now, am I saying that Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes are not worth it? No, but I would prefer to have, more depth at the skill positions that maybe may not be as deep as the quarterback position to really help build an overall roster and not try to blow it up early there in the draft. So we got Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs. You guys both know we're huge on them. Kenyon Drake. As far as wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, and Julio Jones. Now, if you go by our rankings, the main options for us are going to be Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, Nick Chubb, or Josh Jacobs. Those are the 4 who we have highest on our board right now. Now, I do have the 10th pick, which means I'm going to be having another pick here pretty soon. However, I don't want to miss out on one of my top running backs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my boy Nick Chubb. A lot of people are scared about Kareem Hunt. Don't be scared of Kareem Hunt. They can both coexist in an offense, right? Baker Mayfield at times was erratic last year. Now, as much as we want to think he takes a step forward, if he doesn't, they're really going to have a solid run game, controlled by Kevin Stefanski there, the new head coach. We saw what he did in Minnesota in a running game. Do not be surprised if we see both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, both fantasy viable options here. And we also have that option of maybe looking to try to grab Hunt here in a few rounds. So there, after these picks go off the board, after we chose Nick Chubb, we had Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, George Kittle, and Julio Jones. So they all went with pass catchers, right? Which means, once again, our number 2 running back here is Josh Jacobs. And we are super high on Josh Jacobs. A lot of people think that we're too high on Josh Jacobs. But you know what? This is why the rankings are built the way they are, right? A lot of people look at our overall rankings or our positional rankings and say, well, this is the way that you're going to draft them. Not necessarily, because a lot of people may not value those names as much, so they pass on them, right? That's why, in our mind, Josh Jacobs is going to be in for a breakout year, is still on the board in the second round. So, to me, it's a no-brainer. I'm going Josh Jacobs here, and he's my running back 2. Could I have gone at wide receiver? Yeah, I probably could have. But right now, to start off the draft, I have 40 touches a week already on my roster. Fantasy football can't score points without touching the ball, right? I want those touches solidified, and I want them solidified early. 2 young running backs that are going to be utilized in these offenses that they're in. So after that pick, we had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is a name that's going to start going super crazy early in drafts. In my opinion, too early. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Kansas City. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of people have that tendency to overpay for the new shiny toys, the rookies. He's still unproven, right? We've never seen him play an NFL game. We think we know what's going to happen in a Kansas City offense. But am I going to take somebody like that over a Kenyon Drake who I've already seen produce in that offense? Personally, no, I wouldn't. I would take the safer bet of a Kenyon Drake before the guessing of what's going to happen with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But we see him come off the board, followed by Drake, Aaron Jones, Chris Godwin, Austin Eckler, another name who we were high on, but there's no way at this point in the draft he would fall to us in the third. Odell Beckham. A lot of people hating on Odell. He's going to fall to the second, but don't be surprised. And if in a lot of your leagues, he may actually fall to the third. And if he does, absolute steal. Another rookie, Jonathan Taylor. Todd Gurley. I don't hate Todd Gurley this year. Do I expect, Todd Gurley from a few years ago? No. As long as you go into a draft with realistic expectations, you won't be as disappointed. If you're expecting 1,500 yards, 700 yards receiving, 15 total touchdowns, yeah, you may be disappointed. Be realistic with what you're looking for. Lamar Jackson, last pick of the second round, he's off the board. Followed by Kelsey, Sanders. Love Miles Sanders this year. There's a lot of talk going around about Carlos Hyde signing in Philadelphia. I don't love that. I don't necessarily hate it for Miles Sanders, but Carlos Hyde is going to turn into this, generation's version of Frank Gore, who just is still around from last generation, apparently. He's not going anywhere. That's going to be what Carlos Hyde is. Kenny Golladay, Leonard Fournette, A-Rob, Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, and Adam Thielen come off the board after that. So now we go back to our cheat sheets. What do we have available to us? Do we want to go quarterback? No, not yet. Still a little bit too early. A ton of good options here on the board. We already have 2 running backs. Would I go running back? Yeah. I mean, I would if the right guy was sitting there. Chris Carson, love the actual player of Chris Carson. Am I in a rush to grab him this year? I mean, we know the guy's dealt with injuries nonstop, right? To me, there's a lot of risk involved with Chris Carson. We know Penny won't be involved for the majority of the season after his injury last year. They still have Travis Homer, drafted DJ Dallas. They got some options in Seattle. Chris Carson's going to be the guy as long as he's healthy. So there's a question mark there. Melvin Gordon. Is Melvin Gordon what he was with the Chargers? No, probably not, but he's still going to see a heavy volume in Denver. Le'Veon Bell, pass, don't trust Adam Gase. David Johnson is very intriguing to me in the third round. Why? He's going to get an opportunity there, right? Nobody really to compete with. Duke Johnson still in that backfield. But David Johnson, as long as he's healthy and good to go, we've seen what his ceiling is. The problem is we've only seen it once. However, last year before he got injured, I believe it was all the way up until week 8, he was a top 8 running back in fantasy football prior to his injury in the Cliff Kingsbury offense in Arizona. Now he goes to Houston. Houston turned to Carlos Hyde into a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Not the greatest of offensive lines, but it's an improved offensive line, so I don't hate David Johnson. For wide receivers, we got Juju. Love Juju. What I don't love is Big Ben's elbow at this point. We still haven't really seen him throw a football in any type of game speed. The Rona is killing everybody's offseason workouts. It worries me a little bit. Now, if Big Ben was 100% healthy, hands down, no question, right now, I'm taking Juju. 100%. But the questions with Big Ben just kind of make me think a little bit. DJ Moore, love DJ Moore this year. They have Robbie Anderson on the outside, Curtis Samuel in the mix to kind of stretch the defense a little bit. I can see DJ Moore eating underneath on these underneath routes there in Carolina. Now, obviously, Christian McCaffrey will still be involved, but Teddy Bridgewater is not the guy who's going to be slinging it 50 yards down the field. He's going to be looking for those short crossing routes, and that's where DJ Moore can make big plays happen. So he's definitely somebody I'm thinking about right now. A.J. Brown, I love A.J. Brown also, a little bit more big play dependent, right? Not the type of guy that's going to go out and, get you 90, 100 receptions, but he could go out there and get you 70 receptions, get right around 1,000 to 1,100 yards, and heck, all the way up to 8 to 10 touchdowns. The ceiling is there, and we haven't even seen it. We've only seen what he was, given there at the end of the year when he really turned it on in Tennessee. So he's definitely somebody to pay attention to. Also, tight end, Mark Andrews. I'm usually not somebody to reach too early here at tight end unless one of the big names, a Kittle or a Kelsey, fall later than they probably should. Otherwise, there's a lot of value late at tight end. We're actually putting into our draft guide this year some type of a way to acknowledge value picks. What are their per game averages, compared to their ADPs? Really find those values, and there's a lot of them at the tight end position. We may get into that here in just a little bit. So, in my opinion, it's really between running back and wide receiver. Do we want to go with our third running back and give ourselves another 18 to 20 touches a week? I think that personally, right now, the way that it's set up, I do. There's going to be a couple wide receivers that are coming up that are absolute, target monsters, and that's what we're talking about, right? The touches. That's how we score points. So in my opinion, it's really between Melvin Gordon and David Johnson. Melvin Gordon maybe a little bit safer of a floor, but does have Phillip Lindsay to worry about. David Johnson is a high-risk, high-reward player right here. And being that we already have two solid running backs, I'm not totally opposed to taking David Johnson. He is going to see close to 15 to 20 touches. There's been some videos come out lately that look like he's 100% healthy, but it's really hard to tell with all the offseason workouts. But I don't hate David Johnson right here whatsoever. Mark Ingram, didn't mention him earlier, but I don't hate him either. Obviously the Baltimore Ravens are going to be a run-first team. We saw Mark Ingram last year, put up great numbers. Somebody who we preached to a lot of people last year to make sure you grab Mark Ingram. They did draft J.K. Dobbins. How involved is he this year? That adds some question marks. So overall, there's not one clear-cut, hey, this is where we're going to go choice. In my opinion, right here, I'm going to gamble a little bit. I'm going with my third running back, and I'm going to go with David Johnson. And a lot of people may not like that, but we've seen the ceiling, right? We can see him playing all three downs. We can see the touchdown upside in that offense. An offense full of a lot of wide receivers that are injury prone that maybe David Johnson gets a little bit more opportunity. Now, like I said, just last year, the first 8 weeks of the season, he was a top 8 running back. So I'm not totally giving up on David Johnson. After we selected David Johnson, Patrick Mahomes came off the board, followed by A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, and Juju Smith-Schuster. I was kind of hoping DJ Moore would fall. He did not. So let's go back to our cheat sheets, and this is where we want to start looking towards wide receiver, right? We've gotten our 2 running backs and our flex taken care of, but now we need some ball catchers on this roster. Calvin Ridley is a name that I absolutely love this year. If you look up some of his stats, and I can't get too much into it because it's going into the draft guide, but Calvin Ridley is just poised for a huge breakout season. After Mohamed Sanu was traded last year, almost every statistical category for Calvin Ridley increased. And if you take all those averages and put them over a 16-game span, the dude could absolutely eat here in 2020. Cortland Sutton, honestly not that interested after the draft when they brought in Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. We already know about Noah Fant. We've mentioned Melvin Gordon there. He's somebody who's going to eat in some of these touches in this offense. So Cortland Sutton, he's off the board for me. Keenan Allen, love Keenan Allen with Phillip Rivers as the quarterback. The problem is, who's the quarterback in Los Angeles? Is it Tyrod Taylor? Sounds like it may be, but does Justin Herbert come in at some point? How does that affect Keenan Allen? How he's going to have to build chemistry with 2 different quarterbacks throughout the season? In my opinion, not worth the risk. I'm going with the high upside play of Calvin Ridley. That's going to be my choice here at the wide receiver position. And I can hear some people out there probably saying, oh, I already don't like your wide receiver group. Well, wide receiver is so deep in fantasy football this year. There are so many good choices, especially even later in drafts, that you're going to find the value later on. There's going to be wide receivers that are fantasy football startable that aren't even going to go drafted in a lot of your leagues out there. So don't just get caught up on name value. Look at the actual value and production associated with them. So now we're looking back at wide receivers and tight ends, and then we're going to start looking towards quarterbacks. See who's falling there. So far, love seeing Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray still on the board. Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel. Love both these guys. Love the talent of McLaurin. Not sure I really trust the play of Dwayne Haskins. Deebo Samuel, love the offense of the San Francisco 49ers. One of my favorite offenses in the NFL because they're really unpredictable. He's very creative, is Kyle Shanahan, in that offense, and can definitely put these guys in a place to succeed. They just drafted Brandon Ayuk, another wide receiver, in the first round to go opposite of Deebo Samuel. They're going to run a lot, but they're going to have options in the passing game too. Love me some Deebo Samuel. Julian Edelman, no Tom Brady, so I'm really not that interested. Too many question marks there. Tyler Boyd, he's sharing targets with a possible healthy A.J. Green. I mean, we got T. Higgins coming into the mix now. A lot of other options there. The backfield of Joe Mixon, Michael Gallup. Well, he's got CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper to worry about. So at the tight end position, Darren Waller. Last year, I would be all over Darren Waller. Now, he probably wouldn't be at this spot of the draft because we told people to grab him pretty late. But this year, he's going to have a lot more competition for targets, so he may not be as high up that board on your draft board as maybe we have him. We don't have him that high. He's a solid tight end. I'm not going to discredit him, but for where he's going to be drafted, just not worth the value. There'll be other guys later on. So right now, it's really between McLaurin and Samuel. I mentioned the San Francisco offense and how creative it is and how they can score so many different ways. I love it. I want a piece of it. I'm going Deebo. Go back to our draft board here in a second, see what happened afterwards. So we took Deebo, then James Conner, DeAndre Swift, Kyler Murray, and Darren Balls to the Waller went. So now we got Dak Prescott, Terry McLaurin still on the board, a couple of the wide receivers we've already mentioned. Now, this is the 6th round, and this is the earliest that I would go quarterback. And seeing that Dak Prescott is there on the board, it's really hard for me to pass on. Right now, I have Dak as my number 3 overall quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I got Dak and Kyler there right afterwards, and Dak, with the amount of weapons he has, a solid offensive line, a great running game, I can't pass up on it. I'm going with Dak Prescott here and giving ourselves a solid starting quarterback for the roster that we're building. Back to the draft board. Got Tyler Higbee, Terry McLaurin, Evan Ingram. Not that high on Evan Ingram personally this year. Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Hunter Henry, Gronk. Gronk going a little bit earlier these days, and I'm not saying we're going to see old school Gronk, right? That's probably not going to happen. However, top 10 Gronk, I can see that here in 2020. After that, we've got Tyler Boyd, Devin Singletary, Marquise Brown, Josh Allen, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, starting to get a run on quarterbacks here, 6th and 7th round. David Montgomery, Keyshawn Vaughn. That is way early for Keyshawn Vaughn. However, I do believe he takes over that backfield in Tampa Bay. And with Tom Brady under center and the weapons they have on the outside, I love some Keyshawn Vaughn. Then you got Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, Carson Wentz all going here. So like I said, a big run on quarterbacks. Pay attention to that, right? Because a lot of times you can influence a run on a certain position in your own drafts, right? If you see a tight end go and then you take a tight end, people may be more inclined to take a tight end because they want to get their guy before they're all gone. Pay attention to those as you're drafting and going along and kind of just pay attention. It's laid out perfectly here. I can tell just by looking at this roster right here, hey, he's got his 3 wide receivers, a tight end, a quarterback, and 2 running backs. He's pretty solid. He can go anywhere next round. But as you start to look around some of these places, you can realize, hey, there's no tight end here. There's no tight end here. These guys may be going towards tight end pretty soon. That may save me a player coming back around. So let's go back to our cheat sheet here. Find out who we got left at the top of the screen. Already talked about Edelman and Gallup, not really interested. Will Fuller, he's permanently injured for the most part. John Brown, Marvin Jones, super underrated is Marvin Jones. Christian Kirk, another guy I don't hate. Brandon Cooks, he's fallen way down draft boards. I love Brandon Cooks. Obviously, he's like 1 concussion away from never playing again, so there's a lot of risk involved. And being that I already have David Johnson, I don't know if I want that added risk of 2 guys from the Texans that both have injury issues in the past in my lineup. Now, obviously, outside of tight end, everybody else was going on my bench and looking for depth, but still something to pay attention to as you go. For the running back position, Cam Akers, I do think that Cam Akers takes over this job all the way. However, to start the year, it's going to be a running back by committee, and you may not see value till middle of the season. Kareem Hunt. We talked about Kareem Hunt earlier, and this is exactly where he's going to start falling in drafts. As much as I love Nick Chubb, if anything were to happen to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt can stay out of trouble, he's arguably a top 3 to 5 running back in the NFL if this backfield is his alone. I would almost be stupid to pass on Kareem Hunt right here because he won't make it back around. He made the next pick, coming right back around, but he's not going to make it another run through this entire draft board. Is it a handcuff? Is a lot of people's questions. It is. Obviously it is. He is the handcuff to Nick Chubb, but he has weekly value. He's going to be able to be somebody that you can still play in a flex spot, as a bye week fill-in. He's going to have that value weekly. The ceiling may be capped somewhat just because he may not see the amount of touches that he needs, but he's super efficient. So I'm putting Kareem Hunt on the bench there as more of a backup to Nick Chubb, but somebody that I can throw in my flex spot if David Johnson decides he wants to suck balls. Moving back on now, go through the draft board. Afterwards, we had Sony Michel, who I do think sees a lot of touches this week, followed by Cam Akers. The Niners defense, it happens in a lot of leagues, right? People draft defenses way too early. There's a lot of solid defenses out here this year that we'll get into that obviously please don't reach for a defense too early. Usually, the last 2 picks are, reserved for defense and kicker. Do I mind going maybe a round early? It depends who's on the board, but not this early, not 8th round early. And then they went with Darius Geis. Let's go back here. Got Edelman, Gallup, Fuller, Brown, Jones, Kirk, and Cooks. Same guys we just talked about. Followed by James White, Phillip Lindsay, Jordan Howard. I don't hate Jordan Howard this year whatsoever. Followed by Matt Breida, Kerryon Johnson, J.K. Dobbins, Damian Williams. So we're starting to see a pretty, steep decline in running backs right here. Really, after you hit Jordan Howard, it's a bunch of handcuffs. It's a bunch of maybes. It's a bunch of could-bes. And right now, being that David Johnson is sitting there as somebody who's still just a high-risk, high-reward, I may want to go with somebody who may have a safe floor. May not be sexy, but he's going to go out there. He's going to get 200 carries. He's going to get you close to 1,000 yards. He's going to have a handful of touchdowns. He's going to be somewhat reliable. And I'm going with Jordan Howard. A lot of people don't love Jordan Howard because he doesn't put up huge numbers. But when you look at his stats, he is what he is, right? He's just going to go out there and put up close to 1,000 yards if given the opportunity. If you can get him close to 200 touches, he's going to get you close to 1,000 yards. It's not, rocket science. The touchdowns, they've been there between 7 and 9 each year of his career, and he's my running back 4, so I'm not reliant on him. This is kind of just an insurance policy in case David Johnson struggles. Don't hate Jordan Howard whatsoever. Now, no, I haven't forgotten about tight end. Not at all. Now we're starting to get to the point to where there's some value at tight end. Austin Hooper. There's so many mouths to feed in Cleveland. Hooper coming into the mix. They still have David Njoku as of right now. Don't love Austin Hooper, and I'm not going to buy last year's production. Jared Cook, another viable option in a Saints offense, a high-powered Saints offense, but they just added Emmanuel Sanders, and we know that Alvin Kamara is back and healthy. He could be very hit or miss. Noah Fant. Loved Noah Fant before the draft. After Judy and Hamler came in there, Noah Fant not really on too many of my draft boards. Mike Gesicki, the opportunity could be there. The athleticism and the playmaking ability is definitely there. But the reason we kind of saw an uptick in Gesicki end of last season was because there were so many injuries. Preston Williams had gone down. There was no running game whatsoever in Miami. And Gesicki kind of, benefited from that. So I don't want to overpay for that either. Dallas Goedert, somebody who, if something were to happen to Zach Ertz, gets huge volume, but kind of more of a tight end handcuff, I guess you could say. TJ Hawkinson, a second-year tight end who I believe has a lot more value here this year. As long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, they're going to throw the ball. Jonnu Smith, love Jonnu Smith. He may wait a few more rounds, though. Both of these guys may wait a few more rounds between Hawkinson and Smith. And in my opinion, I would have no issues going into a season with both of them as my tight ends. No more Delaney Walker. Jonnu Smith put up crazy, huge, efficient numbers in Tennessee. He was top 10 in a lot of categories and had like 40 targets. Give the dude 100 and see what happens. He could put up some huge numbers. So I'm hoping to land Smith and Hawkinson, but I'm not going to reach yet. There's a lot of other tight ends on the board, so I'm not going that way right now. Brandon Cooks mentioned I'd like to have him, but I don't really know if I want to pair it with David Johnson. Mike Williams, no Phillip Rivers. Who's the quarterback? We mentioned that earlier with Keenan Allen. Sterling Shepard. Love Sterling Shepard, but now Darius Slayton. I expect him to take a step forward in his second year. You already have Golden Tate, Saquon Barkley in the backfield, Evan Ingram. A lot of weapons, a lot of mouths to feed. Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders is somebody who I have circled on my draft boards as somebody who I do not want to let slip by, and I'd like to grab as many times as possible. You have an offense that's going to be dominated by Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. Totally get that. But Emmanuel Sanders is another one of these veteran wide receivers that Drew Brees knows he'll be able to rely on. And I could see putting up some solid, they may be wide receiver 3 numbers, but he's going to be my wide receiver 3. He's not starting every week in some great matchups, some possible shootouts against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers possibly. They would be some great games to throw an Emmanuel Sanders into the roster. I'm not going to let Emmanuel Sanders go by, so I'm going to draft him right here. Go back to the draft board. Got Damian Williams, Ronald Jones, hashtag say no to Rojo. It's all about Keyshawn Vaughn, Latavius Murray. Love Latavius Murray. If I didn't already have Hunter Howard on the bench, Latavius Murray would have been my choice. Look for a little bit more old school Ingram Kamara type workload for Latavius Murray, but that's a different show. Trust me, we got you covered there. Tevin Coleman, not that interested in him either. So now, back to the cheat sheets. Our tight end still sitting there? Yep, Hawkinson and Smith still sitting there. So we're going to let it go one more round. Now, we could go with another wide receiver. We could go with a backup quarterback, but probably not going to happen. There's still a lot of options here. And listen, here it is, round 10. The 111th pick and Brandon Cooks is still sitting there. This is what you need to pay attention to. There's always going to be a name in your draft that falls because people will label as injury prone or I don't want nothing to do with that guy. Listen, the upside is there for Brandon Cooks. I get it. So are the concussions. They're going to be there too, right? But at this point in the draft, in the 10th round, I can't pass it. So I'm taking Brandon Cooks here in the 10th round. Love that pick. Not worried about it whatsoever. After we took Brandon Cooks, had, Henderson, Cohen, Williams, Deontay Johnson, another name I like, Sterling Shepard, AP, Kelly, Duke, Alexander Madison. Starting to see like a lot of backup running backs and stuff going off the board. There's still so many good names available, though. So don't reach for a lot of people. Here went a little bit of a run of tight ends, Hooper, Cook, and Hurst. So now we need to go back and look. So what I want to do is I'm probably going to take one of them in the next round, right? I'll take here another skill position in the 11th, but as we go back to the 12th, I'm going to grab one of my guys because I don't want that long run to go by and miss out on it. So TJ Hawkinson will more than likely be my 12th round pick looking ahead. Now, obviously, like I said earlier, people probably looked at the wide receiver group and was like, nah, I'm not that interested in it. This is where we're looking for that upside, right? Well, look at the names we start to have available here after the 10th round going into the 11th and 12th. Robbie Anderson. Don't dislike Robbie Anderson. I think he's more boom or bust, more big play dependent. Preston Williams. This dude was getting between 7 and 10 targets a game before he went down with an injury. Don't hate him. Golden Tate, another guy who loves to get those yards after catch. We all about that yak life. And Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman is, him and Tyreek Hill opposite each other has to be the biggest speed duo ever. They get Sammy Watkins back, but Sammy Watkins has kind of disappeared for the most part. Mecole Hardman is definitely somebody who I expect to take a huge leap forward here in 2020. The sky's the limit, right? If defenses want to try to take away Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, Mecole Hardman can make them pay, and in his second year, I love it. So I'm going for the upside of Mecole Hardman. Now, this is where I said I'd come back and I'd take TJ Hawkinson. We still have Fant, Gesicki, Goddard, Hawkinson, Doyle. Somebody took Jonnu Smith, didn't they? Somebody did. Mecole Hardman, and there he is. Jonnu Smith went right beforehand. So now we don't have a choice. These are the guys who we had circled early on. There's still some other names down there, but I'm not going to miss out on one of the other ones. I love the potential here of second-year tight end TJ Hawkinson in Detroit. So he'll be our tight end. Tight end is kind of a position that is up for grabs, right? It's not going to take a whole lot to break into the top 10, so you just got to look at those guys that have that potential. He's one of them. Right afterwards went Stafford, Jones, Fant, Scott, Higgins, Mayfield, Big Ben. Don't draft Big Ben this year. Ryan Tannehill. Especially don't draft Big Ben before Ryan Tannehill. Come on, people. Naheem Hines, Dallas Goedert, Preston Williams, Djax, Tyrell, Renfro. I like some Renfro. Goff, Jackson, and Chase Claypool is another name that's probably going to start popping into draft boards all over the place. So we got 3 bench spots left, our defense and our kicker. So let's go back here. We do need a second quarterback. Now, do I always draft a second quarterback? It really depends on the league that I'm in. If I'm in a league where I know there's going to be ample quarterbacks left on the waiver wire, then I won't. If it's a deeper league, or if I know my league mates are drafting all multiple quarterbacks, then I may think about it a little bit later. But I'm not going to reach for one. I'm still looking for those skill positions. I want to make sure that I have the best overall lineup that I can. Chase Edmonds, this guy is going to put up some huge numbers if anything were to happen to Kenyon Drake, right? We saw that last year. No more David Johnson. They drafted Eno Benjamin, but Chase Edmonds would be next man up in Arizona, and that offense will produce, solid running backs, hands down. A.J. Dillon, he's going to be stealing goal line carries and touches away from Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Rashad Penny, not healthy. So now we're way down the list. Right now, Chase Edmonds, that's somebody I'm looking at. Golden Tate, talked about Golden Tate. Love the opportunity of yak yards with Tate. N'Keal Harry, the number 1, possibly now going forward for New England, but we don't know much about Jarrett Stidham, so do we want to trust him? Dede Westbrook, James Washington, Denzel Mims, Paris Campbell is another name that I really like this year for Indianapolis. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about him in another episode, but Paris Campbell is a second-round pick that the Colts absolutely love. Just couldn't stay healthy last year. He could absolutely eat underneath with Phillip Rivers here this year, since a lot of people don't think Phillip Rivers has the arm strength left. So let's see, Paris Campbell and Chase Edmonds. Now, if I always have to choose, more times than not, I'm probably going to take the running back, but right now we already have, 5 running backs and 5 wide receivers. I'm not overly concerned with making sure that number is even. I just want to make sure I'm not overloading one position or the other. So right now, I'm going to go with somebody who I think that I can start on a weekly basis and have some value. That's not Chase Edmonds right now. He's more injury dependent. So in my opinion, give me the golden one of Golden Tate. Building up a solid wide receiver group on the bench, since we didn't spend early picks on wide receiver early, to make sure we have those options. So what we'll do here is I want to talk about another quarterback, even though normally I probably wouldn't take another quarterback right here since there's a few names left. But look at some of the names we got. Cousins, Garoppolo, Rivers, Locke, Darnold, Minshew, Derek Carr. People continue to hate Derek Carr. I will draft Derek Carr. I am not scared of Derek Carr, especially now that he has some weapons to throw the ball to. However, based on what's still available and what I've drafted, right? So I have Deebo Samuel on this roster already. If at any time I need to start Jimmy G, he's definitely somebody who will be a solid, consistent option, and then I could pair him up with a Deebo and kind of double up at times. So as my bench quarterback with what's available right here, I'm going Jimmy G. Like I said, normally though, probably wouldn't have taken a second quarterback. Just doing that so I have an opportunity to talk about more players as we go along. Now is the time. We got 1 bench spot, a defense, and a kicker. I'll look at the defenses, right? Because if there's a top defense available, I'll take one a round early, just not super early. So we got the Patriots, Bears, Saints, Vikings, Rams, Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers. Love the Chargers defense as far as possible takeaways this year. The New England Patriots, their defense will still be solid. It may not be what it was last year. They've lost some, Jamie Collins, Kyle Van Noy on that defense. So they may not have the amount of plays that we saw last year, but still some solid, players in the secondary. The Bears, the Saints. I think the Saints is kind of intriguing this year. The problem is I don't like the division they're in. So I don't know if I want to pick a defense that could be in a lot of potential shootouts. The Minnesota Vikings, not overly, loving that. The Rams, they have some playmakers with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, but their linebacking core is a little bit weak. The Kansas City Chiefs, solid through the air, on the ground, iffy, but they do get a lot of sacks with Chris Jones. So right now it's kind of up in the air. It's a defense. Don't overthink it. Go with one that you basically want to cheer for at this point, because not much is going to change if we make another selection anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to choose the Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. Rack up some points with some sacks. The Honey Badgers there in the secondary. I'll go that way. Now we got a kicker and 1 bench spot left. What do we have left to take? Because the kicker, they're going last. I don't care who it is. Malcolm Brown, Benny Snell, Gus Edwards, Deion Lewis, Jalen Richard, Damian Harris. I mean, this is a bunch of garbage, hot garbage left for running backs. James Washington, Paris Campbell, Corey Davis, John Ross, Larry Fitzgerald. Oh man, Larry just being disrespected. Cole Beasley, another name that being disrespected because Stephon Diggs is in town. I talked about Paris Campbell a little bit earlier. Somebody who has that high upside, that possibility, that draft capital in Indianapolis. Let's just take a stab on Paris Campbell. Come back and get our kicker. And then we'll show their overall lineup. They'll give you a grade. Don't be overly, concerned with the grade. I mean, it's just looking at so many different things. You're looking at the potential in the lineup. So right here, we got our kickers left. Fairbairn, Elliott, Crosby. My only bit of advice for kicker is just pick one that kicks indoors. So at least half the games, you don't have to worry about weather or wind or rain or whatever. Find the best kicker you can that kicks indoors. Right here, top of the list, Kaimi Fairbairn of the Houston Texans is going to be the kicker. Comes up the list. Let me know what you think of the team. We got Dak Prescott, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Calvin Ridley, Deebo Samuel, TJ Hawkinson, David Johnson in the flex. Chiefs and Fairbairn there, my defense and kicker. And then on the bench, Kareem Hunt, Jordan Howard, Emmanuel Sanders, Brandon Cooks, Mecole Hardman, Golden Tate, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Paris Campbell. Overall, super solid offense. Is it sexy? No, it's not, because none of the top wide receiver names are in there, but don't get caught up on the names. That's not all you're drafting. You're looking for value and you're looking for production. Overall, this team right here has a lot of upside. Yeah, there's some risk involved in it also, but there's enough key playmakers all throughout the roster that no matter what, as long as you're smart with the waiver wire throughout the season, you'll be able to compete on a weekly basis. But let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Do you like how I walked you through the mock draft? That's kind of how I look at things as I'm drafting. It's a little bit different without a clock counting down, but I like that a little bit more for these videos because it gives me that opportunity to continue to talk my way through it and not have to worry about making a selection before the clock runs out. So leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you liked it this way or not. Let me know what you think of the team. We're trying to be as interactive as possible. Maybe as you are following along, you saw a name that you would have chosen instead of who I chose. Throw it down below in the comment section. We're all about trying to come up with the best strategy and help each other out. I'm not sitting here telling you that this is the team you have to draft or you're going to suck. That's not the way this works. That's not how fantasy football works. But let me know down below. Greatly appreciate the support out there. Head over to our website, more information there. Plus, our draft guide is for sale right now, $19.99, and it will be almost 600 virtual pages of all things fantasy football to make sure you have a solid roster. A lot of people just looking for the answers, right? Just tell me who to draft. No, it's not my team. It's your team. We'll give you all the information you need to make your best possible choices so you can win some fantasy football championships and be proud because it was you that did it, not just somebody else. But head over to the website, check out the draft guide. Greatly appreciate the support. You guys have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you later.